All right, Nehemiah 12, let's call this one We Praise, because in this chapter they are going to get a cause for celebration as it starts off describing the priests and the Levites who came back in the day of Zerubbabel, organizing them roughly in three divisions. Those who came back in the days of Jeshua, likewise those who came back in the days of Joachim, and finally somebody we're probably going to see in the next chapter as well, if it's the same guy, one person named Eliashib. And so under those three divisions, it's going to describe those who came back in the days of Zerubbabel. Again, the one who led in the early chapters of Ezra, the people in rebuilding the temple. Understanding that, it's going to go on to talk about the cause of celebration in the chapel, which is now the dedication of the wall, which has been built around that temple that Zerubbabel led the people in rebuilding. And so now that Nehemiah has led the people in rebuilding the wall, it's a time for celebration that, among other things, is going to involve a lot of music. And it's going to be organized according to, it's going to say more than once, the command or the instruments and the music of David. It's not going to simply be done by his order or the commands that he had set forth for the original worship at the temple. It's also going to be divided into two great choirs, one described as moving north, the other described as moving south, before they begin to sing and give praise and rejoice. And as usual, after their celebrations are over, life has to resume. So the chapter concludes by describing the ways in which the Levites and the priests are given authority or responsibility over all of those contributions that the people had committed to bring in chapter 10. And so they are now going to assign roles for those priests and Levites, not only over the offerings, but as we mentioned before, the storerooms where they will be held at the temple. And as we mentioned in chapter 10, that means in chapter 13, Nehemiah is going to have to clean Tobiah out of those chambers that he has converted into office space. But the things that caught my attention in this chapter have a lot to do with verse 43 in chapter 12, where it reads, "And they offered great sacrifices that day and rejoiced, for God had made them rejoice with great joy. The women and the children also rejoiced, and the joy of Jerusalem was heard far away." Two things that caught my attention. The fact that they are rejoicing in a way that they can be heard far away, but their enemies are no longer giving them headaches, understanding the way in which early on in Ezra, when Zerubbabel moved back to help build the temple, as we mentioned, that brought retribution and retaliation from the people of the land. Likewise, Nehemiah, when he simply got back to the territory and they got a chance to see all that the king had sent him back with, that brought retribution and retaliation from the people of the land. And likewise, when they finally got to building the wall, their success in building the wall brought backlash and retaliation. But the joy that I found in this chapter was the way in which God brought them through a period of time where their success brought drama into a period where now you no longer hear anything more from their enemies except Tobiah, who we'll see Nehemiah deal with in the next chapter. But for now, what they enjoy is a period of time where they no longer have to simply have a table spread in the presence of their enemies, as we've referenced Psalm 23 and its encouragement from David in the past. Now they simply get to rejoice their legitimate success freely without retaliation. And the other thing that caught my attention is the way that God is causing them to rejoice, even though their next mistakes are only a chapter away. Understanding that even though Nehemiah is going to deal with Tobiah, they still have to deal with the fact that they are locked in relationships with people who they have some things in common with, but who really don't rejoice in their success the same way that they do. And so even though they have not perfected their relationship with God and the people of the land, God is causing them to rejoice at a point of genuine progress. And even though they were not perfected, God caused them to rejoice as they saw genuine progress, leaving behind the watered down success they had in the past that was connected to the watered down version of his wisdom that they were trying to put to work.